Role Player Adventures. This is a campaign-based cooperative game set in the same fantasy world as the game Cartographer and also especially the game Role Player. Hence the name, right? Actually, the two are so connected that you can even import your characters that you created in Role Player and use them as protagonists for Role Player Adventures. If not, there is a large cast of characters, original new characters that you can choose from. The game is campaign-based, meaning the story has persistence. From game to game, you will develop an overarching narrative that will continue for 10 scenarios, each represented by one of these adorably vintage-looking books. So 10 chapters of the campaign, plus a grand finale, plus a side quest. So ideally, you will play them in order, and well, you really have to, because there are so many interlinked elements. You really will get to enjoy a fantasy saga as you play them in order, and you'll get to discover a lot of different things. The game definitely is based on a lot of innovations in gaming and playable storytelling of the kind that we have seen the last decade, and the kind that has made the tabletop gaming such an amazing engine to tell stories. So, ideally, you will have the same friends showing up, the same friends to play chapter after chapter, week after week, or however often you want to play. However, the game is also playable solitaire, which is how I played it. I played the whole campaign solitaire. Matter of fact, I finished it this morning before going to work, and then I went to work with the excitement of knowing that I had accomplished a thing, which I cannot tell you what it is. Discovering the world is going to be a big part of the story, and that's why in this video will not give you any spoilers. I will only show you the materials that you see pretty much when you open the box or when you're learning the game, and when I make examples, I'll make them up. So I will be all crazy made up examples. So it's a campaign, so we're going to need a way of keeping track of some stats from game to game. So when you start a campaign, you'll take one of these sheets here, and you will keep track of different things. One thing is how many times you die, meaning how many times the entire party dies. If one just player dies, a character dying, the character is exhausted. It is only when all characters are exhausted at the same time that they count as dead. Then you mark a box here, and you read the corresponding chapter in this book of encounters that, as you can see, has a lot of stuff in it. And the game really has this strong idea of failing forward, like dying is not the end. If you die a lot, that means you need a lot of help. And the game acknowledges that. This is how you mark how your mastery grows as you level up your characters. Very strong here, the idea from role-playing of improving your characters over time. The place where you will collect experience points that you can trade for different benefits. Gold that of course you use to buy stuff. Titles. This is where you will place these cards representing different things. It's one of the ways that the game uses to keep track of continuity. Those title cards may describe the lasting effects of anything that happens in the game, from, again, making up examples. You really like tuna salad to you were struck by lightning. Later you'll say, oh, do you like tuna salad? And different things may happen if you have the title card or not. And right there, from the thickness of this deck, you know that there are a lot of different states that your characters may be in, may acquire, grudges, alliances, anything and everything may happen there. Bonus, play limit. During the game, you will play cards to affect the odds of certain things happening. There's a limit that the group has. During the game, you will also acquire tokens that will allow you to get extra plays to affect, again, the result of different checks, and that's why you place those tokens there. Keywords is the other main way of keeping track of continuity. Again, you may have the keyword diamond, Skeletor, I hurt my foot, whatever it is. Again, you'll write the keywords here, and then later the adventure book and the encounter book will ask you what you got there, and will tell you what happens there. The rest token will tell you if your party can rest or not, depending on things. And here's super important, there are 3 factions that will be that you will work with or against. These are different parties that are fighting for dominance in the world of Nelas. And we have the King's Favor, the King's Guard, the Starlit Door, and the Dragul. And so depending on how you move these markers and different choices you make will move them, that will decide how much favor or lack thereof you're showing in each category. And these do affect the narrative quite a bit. So this is for the overall setup of the campaign. Now we want to set up your character. You're gonna have a display such as this one, and you're gonna insert this a sheet like this in here. There you go. And then you're gonna write your stats there. As you can see, there are areas where you can place cubes. They represent stamina. That's how you set up your character board. Then you need, lo and behold, a character. Again, I told you there's a large cast of characters. Suppose that I want to play with this character here. In the back, it tells me the starting stats for this character. And so I will first write down those numbers in there. So for example, her strength is 0, so I write 0 there. Her dexterity is 2, so I write that there. And then I also, after writing those things, I place cubes in there corresponding to the stats. Dexterity 2, then I'm gonna place 2 stamina cubes here, Constitution 1, and so on and so forth. And that's how you set up your character. She has also Intelligence 2, Wisdom 2, and Charisma 1. Each character also has a profession, and there will be a deck of cards here indicating that. So, as you can see, lots of different professions. She is a sorcerer, so this is her profession, and we place the card there. And that's a specific ability that can be used during combat and or during checks, and when you use it, you flip it face down. The general idea is that you will spend resources to pass tests, skill checks, or combat. Combat is just a special form of skill check. And when you do so, first you will be allowed to spend stamina and turn it into fatigue to acquire dice of a specific color. Suppose that I want to pass a certain test that requires a white die, then I can spend 2 stamina of the corresponding color to take a die out of the bag early on. Other game effects may cause and you can also then choose to trade any 3 stamina for 1 cube of the corresponding thing. Like if I want to have 2 of Constitution, 2 cubes of Constitution. I can use any 3 to turn that into a cube of Constitution, and 2 cubes of Constitution will allow me to get a green die out of the bag for a check. So the general idea, the kind of like cycle of stamina is that you will spend stamina and turn it into fatigue. The game effects will cause more fatigue to be dumped in there. When your fatigue equals or exceeds your health, which you will write there, that's bad. That's when your character is exhausted, again, sort of temporarily dead. So as you play, these cubes will move here, more cubes will get in there, this card will probably be flipped face down as you use that ability, and then also you will have other cards that you will use to increase your chances of passing tests. Maybe you'll have armor, and you will have some traits, and you will have things like that. And those also, some cards you will need, once you spend them, they don't go back into your hand immediately. So that's when the rest action is important. The rest action will allow you to spend experience points. For each experience point that you spend, you take a die out of the bag, you roll it, and that's the number of fatigue cubes that you can remove from here and place back in the supply. After you do so, then you reload your abilities here back to whatever your starting or maximum number is. When you rest, you refresh your ability. Again, you get back cards into your hand that require resting. And that's the general idea. Spend stamina, turn it into fatigue to trigger game effects, get more fatigue from failure in combat, reduce that through resting, and you got pretty much one of the main some of the main mechanics of the game. Next we have the map. Again, you're gonna choose the adventure you're gonna play, which will tell you which of the maps of the game you're gonna use and how to set it up. You're gonna place your party marker there in the starting position. Then you start reading the... What? Did you thought I was gonna open the book? What, am I crazy? Spoilers in 2022? Pfft, who does that anymore? You're gonna open the book and start reading. It says, oh, you are in the lovely location. And then possibly, who knows, if it's the first time you go to a location, locations usually will have experience points placed on them. You collect the experience point, and you take it from there. The book will tell you what happens, what are the choices, where you can go, what actions you can take. Sometimes you fight, sometimes you solve puzzles, sometimes you travel. These tokens here, encounter tokens, which add more variety, because that means that the events, maybe now in this game Encounter 2 is there and Encounter 1 is there, but next time we play they're there. Of course, some of the other encounters are more fixed, but encounter tokens on the board will give you that variety that you don't know where they are. So, face encounters, see what happens, resolve things. Until pretty much you find a way to complete the story, and what that means, again, depends on the challenge, depends on the scenario. Some actions will give you titles, as we said. Some actions will give you discoveries, different things that may happen. One thing that you may find is new locations. As I explored this map more specifically, for example, I find out that there is a secret airport placed there. I know that's a good example of I'm making stuff that is weird, so I'm sure I'm not accidentally telling you something in the game. The famous secret airport that is there. And this card shows a secret airport and tells me place it there, and it even shows a little path, so now the characters can go there. So it's really fun to see how you get to know and more about the map and find secret locations there. So discoveries and titles, and from time to time you'll be told that you have to pass a skill check. So how is that done? First you'll be told the trait that you're testing. Suppose that we're taking a skill in interpretation, but could have been stealth, could have been quickness. By interpretation it is. The game also tells me what level of difficulty it is, like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And then that will tell me the kind of dice that I need to roll and what is my dice limit, the dice limit. For example, for this test, I can use by default up to 4 dice, unless I give me effects, so let me break that. For this one, up to 6. That's when I can spend those stamina cubes, remember, turn them into fatigue to collect dice of specific colors. And suppose that here we're taking this test here because you're super brave. And so there are a lot of white dice that we're gonna need, and then purple and red and blue. So I decide to spend dice to get a white die. And then I spend more stamina also to get a red one. Then, well, you simply draw from the bag until you have the total. That would be 10 in this case. So you choose how much stamina you want to spend to increase your chances of getting the combination of colors that matches that. I don't think this is 10. Once you have your pool of dice, you roll them. Of course you do. And then you manipulate them. So you start spending game effects, trying to cover these numbers here. That works, that any number would do. Oh, I have a game effect that lets me turn that into a 3. So I'm trying to match the colors and the symbols. The game definitely has a deck building element in that you will start with a pool of cards representing, again, skills, scrolls, weapons, and so on and so forth. And after you formed your pool of dice, you roll them, you start spending cards, manipulating them, turning them around, flipping them to the opposite side, changing the color, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And some of these cards have the symbol here, which means that once you use them, you place them in your spent area next to your personal board, and you need to rest, to take the rest action to get them back into your hand. The other cards that don't have that come back to your hand after the test. So you're trying to cover all of those icons there. If you do, then you're successful and you follow what the book says for that case. If you fail, well, there will be an entry for that also. Combat, I'm going to show you one enemy just to show you what they look like. Combat is basically a form of skill check, as I was saying. The difference is that it may last several rounds if you're unable to defeat your enemies on round one. So, matter of fact, you're going to place a cube there to indicate the combat may last up to 3 rounds. There may also be modifiers, such as this enemy is rabid, hates fighting at night, has, I don't know, short-sighted, whatever it is, that these modifiers that the adventure will give you may, again, make enemies behave differently in different situations. And the same thing here. Before a fight, I can choose to spend stamina and into fatigue to get the correct number of dice, or to get some dice of the correct type. Then I will still get to draw from the bag a number based on the dice limit for that combat, roll dice, and spend cards to manipulate things. And again, if I'm able to cover all of the slots, then I win the fight. Otherwise, I need to go to the next round and suffer the penalties that are represented by the icons that I did not cover. So, for example, if I don't get to cover that slot there at the end of turn 1, the slot gives me 3 points of damage, that one 3 points of damage, 2 and 1. On the plus side, those are the rewards in coins and experience points that I get for defeating that card. And also a good thing, when I'm taking a skill check, as I showed you earlier, even if I fail, I still get to collect experience points for the areas, for the slots that I covered. And so I continue like that until either everybody's exhausted and I lose the fight, or 3 rounds came around, I was unable to defeat the enemy, or I cover all those slots, I defeat the enemy, and then I can go to the entry of the book that says, go there if you defeated the enemy. So this is the general idea. Choose a scenario, travel the map, pass skill checks, pass combat checks, interact with the world, see what happens, try to complete the adventure. There's almost also a point and click element in which there may be items in here that you're able to use, again, point and click style. Oh, I put together those 2 items and I'm able to solve that problem. Continue like this until, well, you win the scenario or you lose the scenario. And between scenarios, you also get to spend experience to advance your characters, because that is really fun and cool to do, and it really gives you that role play feel. This box is big, but the world it contains is bigger. Role-playing games have created worlds since the 1970s, but tabletop games have taken a little longer. Of course, the advantages, if you can do it in a tabletop game, is you don't have to prepare, you don't need a game master, you only need a fraction of the rules to play them. But again, it's harder because you are constricted by the physical components in the set. And it has been only in the last decade or so that I believe games have really given us world boxed games. Open the box and booyah, you're entering a fantasy world with a story, backstories, characters, alliances, places to discover, and things like that. Gloomhaven, of course, did that very well, and Role Player also does this in an excellent way. Role Player Adventures is a fun, epic story that you get to play, that you get to live, that you get to inhabit, that you get to discover. It really delivers in the genre of epic fantasy campaign. And it's great that you can play cooperatively, and it's great that you can play it, of course, solo, as I did, and I found this completely enjoyable. I use 2 characters. I see you could potentially do it with only 1 character, but why would I deprive myself of the joy of seeing the interaction of 2 characters? So, the story is strong with this one, as it should be when you're playing a campaign game, when you want to see a narrative develop over so many chapters. Of course, the downside is always that replay value is going to be limited. I guess I could replay some of the scenarios, maybe at some point in life, even the campaign, take different paths, but the joy of discovering the main points, it's gone. And that's okay. It's okay if games end, like great movies, like great books, at some point they end, and you get to play again a number of scenarios before you get there, before you get to the end. And there is it's a story that is worth discovering, with plots and twists. At some point early on, something happens that I really did not expect, and then it takes a couple of scenarios to figure out what's going on. Later scenarios get quote-unquote weirder and weirder, and that's a good thing, meaning even the characters who grew up in a world with all these fantasy creatures, they get to experience increasingly exotic and unusual things that happen. I think that the game does a really good job of keeping the attention alive in the characters and also in the players, as we don't get to see the same world for 11 times. So excellent story. The combination of keywords and title cards, they really create interesting narrative connections as you acquire a certain title. People know you in a certain way, and then you see a certain character, and because of what happened, they interact with you in a certain way. Yeah, there's a little bit of suspension of disbelief because it's a pretty small world. You meet a lot of people multiple times, and that's fine. That's what creates narrative cohesion. So, no problem, no complaints whatsoever with the story. It was a fun and exciting one to discover. Gameplay, no problem there either. Because the game felt decidedly different from a lot of other campaign and adventure games. What surprised me pleasantly is that it really retained the dice game element. Not a game with dice, but dice game proper. Because the dice and what you can do with them and the selection that you get, how you can spend resources to create a dice pool and to manipulate it, that remains central. And I was a little bit suspicious at the beginning. I was a little bit skeptical. How is this going to work? I was afraid that the dice game, which you have a legit dice game here, was going to detract, since it's so abstract, from the narrative. And somehow, magically, maybe the two actually do go together very well. Because, especially in my opinion, because of the cards that allow you to manipulate the dice. So those give you more agency, which of course, from the gameplay perspective is awesome. But also add to the theme. Because you really get the sense, I'm playing this card, I'm casting Fireball, I'm using a force field, I'm using this stone to change that energy there. They really work. And actually, so collecting new cards as the game progresses feels both interesting from the point of view of the game options that you unlock, and also from the point of view of the theme and the stories you're acquiring. New scrolls, new weapons, the familiars. Once you start playing with those, you don't want to go back. It's too much fun to have those weird creatures that will give you extra dice, and they're special dice, and it's just awesome. So I was really pleasantly surprised how a dice game inserted as such within a campaign game retained so much interest and actually worked so well to enhance the experience. So I'm really happy. I'm really pleased with this game. Again, I played it solitaire, and I played it about 1, 2, sometimes 3 scenarios a day. Playing it solitaire, I would say a scenario would take me about 90 minutes or so. If you're playing it with your group, it's going to take longer because people will discuss and make decisions together, and that's part of the fun also. But it was such a pleasure. It was such a joy to be part of this epic adventure in the fantasy world of Nameless. Again, many games are trying to give us a world in a box, an epic saga in a box. Some succeed, some not so much, but Roleplay Adventures really achieves what it set out to do. It is a great fantasy adventure. Yes, it's not cheap, but you do get a lot of material components, and most importantly, you get a lot of adventure, a lot of story, and a lot of stuff of fiction. Stuff the fiction is made of. A true world in a box. I'm very impressed with Role Player Adventures.